Thanks again for tuning in to our Enlightened Conversations, where this season we are deep diving into some tough topics with our guests. I will also be sharing some enlightened conversations with my favourite intergalactic being, Ralph, from my book, Conversations with Ralph, as well as some new, never been heard of conversations with them. You hear it all here, real, raw and rare, and all shared in an enlightened way. Hi everyone, and welcome to Enlightened Conversations. It's Michelle Lightworker here. I have the wonderful Suzy Wilson from Bottoms Up Colonics joining me today. Hey Suzy.
Hey Michelle, lovely to be here.
Yeah, so great. As I was just chatting with you and we were talking about how the last time I had caught up with Suzy, we did an episode for High Vibe Hunter. We were covering Bottoms Up Colonics and all about what they do there, and it was really super interesting. I still haven't had a colonic. I can't believe I haven't since then, Suzy.
Ow.
But can I just say I have booked in for one actually, just
Oh,
because I really feel like it's a good thing to do. Because as I just mentioned, heading overseas from November, and I just really would like to, just be fully in touch with what's going on there, and everything seems to be functioning well. I've been a vegetarian for the last 4 years, so it'll be just interesting to see what my gut's doing post, vegetarianism, all that jazz.
I actually think it's a nice way to meet yourself. You actually, and this is the whole thing about the way with Roger's Colonics and what we do at Bottoms Up. It's colonics has been about traditionally, colonics is always elimination of what's in the colon. It's always been getting rid of your poop, right?
Yeah.
And we used to talk also about your cellular memory, so getting rid of that. And that was one of the reasons I got involved in colonics originally 20 years ago. But my ilk and where I've traveled with colonics since actually the last time I spoke to you is very much more conscious of the water that we're using, the medicine of the water, and the need for hydration, because a lot of our diseases stem out of inflammation, which stems out of dehydration of the cell. So if people will say, oh no, I drink a lot of water, it's actually not we're drinking, it's what we're absorbing. It's a bit like when they say it's not what you eat, it's what you absorb. We find people are so dehydrated now. And in fact, I was reading an article just the other day that I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was actually citing the statistics, which was high for chronic dehydration in the human population today. And that's really partially because of the water that we're drinking. We can't absorb the water. And unfortunately, and I was just speaking to a water expert this morning, we think we're buying good water. We think we're doing the right thing, but it's still not necessarily being structured to a level that we can absorb it. So that's a whole new thing that we're getting interested in the water. So my journey for the last 5 years has really been about developing our technique with the therapist so that we really look at how we're going to hydrate your body. And I think that's some of the work that you saw when you made a comment on one of my posts last week is about so whilst we are doing a colonic for hydration, it's about the hydration, not the elimination. What we see through that hydration is an elimination of something that's not poop. It potentially is parasites. It's not just mucoid plaque that people talk about. There's something that we actually get come away, and we can tell by the person's psychology when they're actually releasing that, So yeah, my journey's been big since I last spoke to you.
Wow, that's amazing. And for those of you who don't know Suzy, like she has had an incredible amount of time where she's spent over 20 years now, where she birthed Bottoms Up Colonics, and this was like well before any of us kind of were really trending this idea that there's a connection between the gut and the brain, and cellular memory and things like that. So Suzy's been really in this field intensely for the last 20 years, and she's seeing the nuances, and she's seeing how we can also take other approaches to it as well. So it's really amazing that you're bringing that to the table today. And I just also wanted to speak to the fact that before Suzy was immersing herself in the industry of colonics, she was also a specializing in social work and working with abuse and things like that. So she's actually had a really great history understanding healing journey, understanding, families suffering from, abuse, trauma, learning and behavior difficulties, counseling children. And so I just wanted to bring that to the table too, because when you have a background in understanding the dynamics of what can create illness, and also then you're coming into the physical realm where you're realizing how closely connected the releasing or realizing and resolving of those issues affect our health, and also how we can help to promote that healing ourselves, that emotional healing ourselves through intention, through physical intention, turning up, having a colonic and saying, okay, let's look at this.
1,000%. And I find it really fascinating in my life when you talk about it, because it's true. I spent like 20 years sort of working in the psychology with the brain, and working with that trauma. And just at the end of that, we were starting to hear about cellular memory. That really fascinated me. And then I sort of then weaved over into having colonics, much to my dismay, but the connection was the cellular memory. And that's what drove me into colonics. It wasn't so much that I had really chronic constipation and a bowel issue. It was after a session I had, it's like, wow, this has really affected my thinking. Like I'm having clarity and stuff now. So it was that in the last 20 years I did the mind, and then the last 20 years really understanding the body and the cellular memory. And now I'm very interested in bringing all that together, because it's a triology, right? And it's to bring in the spirit and the higher consciousness, or that part of us, that mystery part of us. I don't even like to put words to it sometimes, because it will close down someone's thinking. But it's that part of us that's more than us. In whatever way that you want to have. And that part of that's in more of us, it's like, if you want to talk about it in psychology terms, it is that subconscious. So we know that the subconscious is driven by the conscious. So it's those physical thoughts, they tell the subconscious what to do, which then will manifest cellularly, right? So now it's like, well, how do we tap into that at that next level up, so that we can be really more conscious of how we're healing? And that's been a part of my journey since I last saw you. I was diagnosed with lymphoma in 2020, this time actually 3 years ago. With that, and I'm talking about triology, it's been 3 years ago. I actually had lymphoma, and it was pretty bad. You can't say cancer's, it's all relative. It's not good, I guess. But what I meant by that is that it started to have complications, because it started to eat a hole in my throat, and I had a lot of fluid on my lungs. So there was a lot of other things going on that I also had to address, as well as this massive cancer on my chest in the lymphoma. And but being in my background of, well, what is that saying to me cellularly? Like, how is my body talking to me? This is my throat. This is about me speaking up. You know, when I was watching the fluid coming off my lungs, I had like 4 or 5 liters of fluid. They were draining it over a weekend. I was basically saying Ho'oponopono the whole time, because it was about, when I was expressing, it was expressing deep grief, right? But I felt really that it wasn't just my grief. And it wasn't because I was trying to avoid my grief. I'm pretty happy to go there, not to stay there, but we go on a journey and move on with it. But it was very much that real feeling of Ho'oponopono when I was actually doing that. And that was, I mean, that sort of got me through a lot of moments. But that whole about that I called it change. It wasn't cancer, it was change, because it really did bring my world together. You know,
I love that.
It brought my mind, and now it's like, all right, spirit, how am I weaving this now, and how am I going to bring that out? And that's where water is the medium. You know, like water now is our medicine. And I talk about that. I presented a paper in 2018 on Nyabe medicine, and Nyabe is a Aboriginal word for water in Bundjalung language, and I was given that term that I could use that. And we're now just understanding. I hear people talk about water now like they've never talked about water before. And if you haven't heard of beautiful Veda Austin, you know, go look her up and look at her work, because it's just like amazing that we're now understanding that water is this next element. So I find it's quite fascinating that I'm now sitting in amongst this whole therapy that we do with water. I spent the last 5-6 years really looking at it as a place of hydration, not just elimination. It's in fact through this hydration that we promote elimination.
It's like that yin and the yang, isn't it? It's like, you know, it does the whole you know, yang thing of the elimination, and then it's doing the yin thing of hydration and
Deep.
giving us and feeding us as well. So it's got that, balance. It's interesting you were talking about the cancer. Is that what it is? Is it lymphoma cancer?
Yeah,
So
or something rather.
BL
Yeah.
cancer in the lymph nodes, is it?
Yeah, well, but it
Yeah.
was, I had like a mass all across my chest.
Right.
It was massive, yeah.
Like I have a different take on cancer to a lot of people. I think a lot of people think cancer is bad, and I actually look at it like saying, "Look at me! I just want to actually have something seriously addressed now. I need something to be looked at, and it's a helper." I look at it like a change agent of awareness and of intense awareness, though, because it's like an urgency, and it's. But I also look at it like it's saying, I need to be looked at right now. Like, and and it's not something that we've done that's wrong. It's something that's come up to be healed. And it's either going to help heal us and we'll stay and we'll carry through, or it's going to heal us and we'll hopefully we'll resolve, and then we transition. And I don't actually look at cancer as a a bad thing. I know a lot of people have that sort of fuck cancer thing. I don't
Well, I
kind
think,
of have that anger towards cancer,
I think people are scared because it confronts our mortality. So,
Yeah.
and it was never something like that for me. It was my little Instagram page my daughter made for me, and I would say to people, it's actually cancer, not change. So that's what I did. So I'm going through a change, and I would laugh, but I'm serious when I say I feel like the way I had it too, and what happened, if I had got any type of other sickness, I would have just kept working. I wouldn't have changed my action. And it was like I had to be slam dunked. I was slam dunked. I couldn't walk. I could hardly talk. I could not really breathe. I couldn't swallow. I didn't eat for 3 or 4 months. I couldn't swallow anything. I had a stent. I could hardly swallow my spit. So it was like, it was intense. It was big. It was like, making a decision. One night I had a talk with Spirit and said, I think I'm done. Like, I'm pretty good. Like, I went through my life. It's like, yeah, I'm done. I feel like I've contributed, and I actually really feel like I have in my life. I feel like I've contributed very well in whatever role I've done, both professionally and with my family and my personal life. And so I was quite resolved about that. But then my daughter come to me and I had a conversation, and she said, well, that's okay, Mum. Like, she's very supportive. That was her journey. She said, but what do you want me to tell the girls? I've got 2 granddaughters. And then she said, and what do you want me to tell Oliver's kids when he has kids? That's my son. And, that just threw me. That was just like, gosh, does that mean I can't think about just me? So in that moment, it was like, you know what? This is actually not about you, Sue. This is about that you've got a responsibility as an elder, as a mum, as a granny, like that maybe you don't think you've got anything else to contribute, but there's people coming up that do think you've got something to contribute. So it was real that moment of like, oh, okay, I do have something else to do while I'm on this earth walk. And I'm still not 1,000% clear about where that is. And I know, that's coming clearer because it's been a process in the last 3 years of going through that and getting well. But I agree, cancer is, I think the scary thing about cancer for me is that we feel so helpless with it. And we feel like we've got to choose about a treatment plan. I had chemo. I had to have chemo. But on the other side, people would say I didn't have to have chemo. If I wanted to be alive and not in palliative care, I had to, because the tumour was growing at such a rate and I had such a hole in my throat. So it was like they had to shrink it to get it under control, right?
Yeah.
I could have done alternative medicine, take longer, high risk, blah, blah. But I chose to go down the chemo thing. But on the other side of that, I was fasting anyway because I couldn't eat, but I was having colonics and I was doing enemas and I was doing my other stuff, because I feel like we've got to get rid of like this. We have a dualistic approach in this human life, and I feel that's where we get caught, because then it's either or, and it's like, no, it's like what we just talked about with the colonics. It's like it's the number 8. It's eternity. That's what it's about. And if we can bring in all of the knowledge that we've got and stop, and don't be so, because I think no matter what side of the fence you're on, if you're really black and white on that side of the fence, you're closed down.
I agree.
you know,
100%. Mm-hmm.
we have to be open. I believe.
Agree.
I believe, yeah.
Yeah, and often we just don't learn things that we might not have known as well that exist, and those worlds cross over more than we realize. That's what I've realized working back in HR and with recruiting GPs, and there's just a lot of information that by just being in a judgmental zone of it's either holistic or it's not, it sort of like disrupts that whole holistic kind of ethos, really, because we're not actually keeping in touch with that whole realm of east or west meeting and somehow finding a partnership there. I'm a big believer in both as well, and to trust your body and to trust what you feel you need to do for yourself. And you know, I just feel like you know, I just like to research odd things, really. I mean, I came upon, like, you know, the Star Trek captain Kurt, William Shatner's, he had an episode on his new show that's on SBS Catch Up, and it anyway, it's on SBS, and I don't know if it's on Catch Up now or Real or both or whatever, but it's called The Unexplained, and he had this episode on freaking, like, how is the earth created? Is it evolving? Is it the whole Darwin theory? Is it and then he came up with this at the end of it, like, he just explores ideas. He's not kind of saying, I think this is right. But he came up with this, you know, research piece about panspermia, which was about asteroids delivering, you know, microscopic life forms to Earth, and so we could be descendants of other planets and all that. So what is human and what is alien? And, you know, that kind of thinking kind of, then I took it. I think I was having a conversation with my hubby, and we're just chatting about, like, what if, like, you know, like if life forms evolved to an intelligence to help, you know, if they're really smart, they would find a way to stay alive. They would find, wouldn't they? I mean, they would find a way for things to be peaceful. They would find a way to be in harmony with, they would find a way to try to get the best out of, you know, where they're living. And then I thought, well, you know, what's to stop, like, humanity evolving to a microscopic size? Like, you know,
or did we come from that originally anyway?
Yeah, or the other way around, and
or is it just time frame that's enveloped and we're doing it all at once? Do you know what I mean? Like, when I hear you speak about it, it's like, I think about, because I'm very interested in the communication network of the fungus that's underneath the ground between the trees, right? Like, and fungi has been since the beginning of time. And that's when people talk about parasites and bacteria and stuff. And I feel like, you know, and we try and kill them, right? We try and kill them.
Yes.
And I say to people, it's like, you know what? It's like trying to kill a cockroach. A cockroach will come back. It will be here when long after we are here, you know. But bacteria are exactly the same, and same with parasites. Most parasites, because, and the same as the fungi, because what do they do that's different to us as humans? They stick together as community.
Yeah, that's true.
They stick together as community. So they know that it's like ants are the same. Like, ants will forever be around. No matter how much ant kill you do, ants will be there, you know, because they stick to community. And I think that if we're thinking, so for me, this might sound a bit weird, but when I think about the human being, the body, and I think about Mother Earth, I am one cell of Mother Earth.
Yeah.
So if I think that I'm a human body and I've got 1 trillion cells in me, right, that are sticking off me, you can see they're sticking off me, right? The health of those cells is going to depend on what I'm giving this body. Now, if I look at Mother Earth and I see that I'm just one of her trillion cells, I can see the health of her body by what's actually happening in our world, because our corals are dying and we're acidic, right? Mother Earth's acidic, but so are we. So what we're actually, and so once we clean up ourselves, Bottoms Up's little tagline is healing Mother Earth one belly at a time.
One belly at a time. That's right. Yeah. Yes. I highlighted that on your bio. Yeah.
Yeah, because this is where I started, was that I come off a farm. So and this goes to the statement you're saying about, you know, your bacteria that's come from somewhere and it's evolved. It's like, in your colon is a compost bin. We are a living, walking organism. We're just held together by skin. But even if we put this skin under the microscope, it's going to be alive. There's going to be critters crawling on it. We don't see them, but that's how bacteria is, right? Keeping us well. This is why we have to be careful when we're using all of our antibacterials and stuff, because we're wiping out our natural protection, our natural immune system. So when I look in the colon and I see that, and then you spread that compost bin, in my mind, it's not a quantum leap to see how that then becomes Mother Earth. And then how we all become a part of her. So when people talk about parasites, and I mentioned this to you, like I've done some time sitting with Aboriginal elders and women out bush, Australian Circle, and I was talking to one lot actually about the colonics, and I was giving the analogy of like it's a river, and our bloodstream is our river, and our blood cells are our pebbles, and what happens over time is that the river gets dried up and congested, and now we get stagnation happens, and that's where we now get sick. From there, we get that inflammation, right? And they got that, they really got that. But then the next thing, it was like we started to talk about the parasites, and then they said to me, oh, so that's when someone gets out of sync, like when their spirit's not straight, it's because the aliens have come. They call them aliens have come into their body and take them off center. So they have to go and they put them through their healing to get get rid of those aliens, to get their spirit back. I get that. Like if you see some of the stuff that I've seen come through tubes, they're aliens, man. You go to my clinic in Narangula, I've got big pictures of what I've taken when people have been releasing. Not poo. It's not poo. It's cellular memory is how I call it. But if you wanted to, if I was speaking it in my Aboriginal way, I'd be saying, yeah, they're probably aliens. Because I can see someone's psychology change, their whole being change. As they release that, their being changes, the colour in their face changes, their spirit changes, their aura changes. So
and it's like that law of attraction thing. So, we've spoken about this before too, is that what we think and believe, we create the environment for what exists in our system, and what we kind of welcome in and what we push away, really. So if we're welcoming in lower vibrational forms of energy, that can come from wherever it comes from, alien or whatever. And that I think that there can be the opposite too. Like my husband was saying to me, like he likes to make friends with whoever's on his island, like he sort of looked like his body's like an island. I'm like a planet myself, and he sort of said, look, I need to make sure, hey guys, are you doing great, and have conversations with them. And I really love that idea, because it was kind of like, oh yeah, like you get to choose who's on your island or your Mother Earth, and you get to have conversations with them, say, well, you're welcome on take a walk, you're not doing me any favors here, I really need some more support for this or that. And it's about taking ownership for us being that one cell, but also taking ownership for us having a collection that we're bringing to the table as well. And we do have control over that. And I think all those things that you talked about before, whether it's chemo, whether you want to handle things in a way that alleviates things very quickly so that you can get to the next point, I think, more power to us, because that's our right.
Oh, and to understand that we are that, and that we can, it's like when we're talking about vibration, like if we have an environment that is housing pathogen, or pathobiome is a new word for that, I think, but anything that's not useful for us in a good compost, then that's going to immediately lower our vibration. So when people talk about to have high vibrational thoughts and energy around you, that's very tricky when you've got an environment that you're living on. When your island is acidic, it's going to be very hard to attract and that's why when people talk about, I don't know what's going on, I'm manifesting as much as I can, I'm putting out positive thoughts, I'm repeating my statements, like people, and they even will say, I'm eating all the right food, I see people, but I'm still not right, or I still can't get past this block, whatever that block is. It's because the environment inside is not being cleaned up. And going to the toilet once a day does not say that you cleaned up. I remember that, and I learned that very early on in colonics. I had a man, he was probably around 50. He got diagnosed with kidney cancer when he was around 20. He chose to go very plant-based and heal himself, which he did. Obviously, he was 50 and still going strong. And he was a chef. I couldn't believe it, French chef. Anyway, his treatments were amazing. He taught me what it looked like, he's the only person that I've ever seen and no matter how well people come, how well they are, and I've been doing colonics for 20 years, and I could show you what I got rid of a few weeks ago when I did a cleanse, because I do them once a month, but every now and again I'll do like 5 in a row, just because it's that hydration, that flooding of the environment, depending on what's going on, what you get rid of. So it's all of that. And as I said, the psychology that you see people go through, the change. So when people are just off kilter, when they've got that alien taking them over, that parasite, whatever, that other entity, it definitely has a psychology. And I wrote a paper with Dr. Sully about that. We never did anything with it. It'd be somewhere. She was a lady I met in the States, and she was very fascinated by the psychology of parasites. And I was just studying, this was in 2012, and I was watching people's behavior change, and not to mention all their symptoms, but their behavior is what I'm interested in. It's like their psychic, because of my background, right? So seeing people that are on antidepressants not be on antidepressants anymore, seeing people seeing that beautiful part of life, there's something in that. And whether doctors and science want to say it's parasite or not, I guess I've gone past being interested by that, because I work on the symptom relief and the change in the psychology of the person that's in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like it's one of those things is that, oh gosh, it was fascinating. I remember going down to like being in a room full of doctors, GPs at a conference a couple of years ago, and they were doing a keynote speaker on poo and the power of poo, and it was they were talking. It was all about gut health, and is there evidence to say that giving people probiotics is going to make their gut health healthy and all this kind of thing. And what they came to the conclusion was, well, they said, look, you can do that. You can pop a probiotic in, but is it going to give the variety that a person needs to have in their gut? Probably not. Like, it'll probably take a while for that person to have a balance of flora in their system. But they were also speaking to they said that the most healthiest people that are on the planet, they live forever, like for ages, and they tested their poo and they had so many microbes more than we have. And so it wasn't a lack of microbes, it was the balance, it was the type, it was and they said, like, if you want to increase your health, shake people's hand as you travel, like, I mean, they say wash your hands, but they were actually at that conference, and it was pre-COVID, but they were talking about how you shake people's hands, and especially over in that part of the world, I'm pretty sure it was the Amazon, you're from that culture, you're gonna increase your microbiome to be much beneficial for yourself as well. So it is an incredible topic.
100%. And microbial diversity is what determines your health, without a doubt. And that's why we know, and that's the fear when people go straight carnivore. It might be good for a lot of other things, but for long term, you're not going to have your diversity. Eating your sauerkraut, make sure you get diversity. 30 different foods, vegetables every day, like, to get that diversity. It's all about diversity. And that's about building your environment, right? So imagine each one of those little bacteria, that's like a little person. So it's like, again, that what we're talking about, it's like how, and if we've got enough of those goodies, then that's going to crowd out the baddie. So that's, again, how we work. It's like, we don't aim on getting rid of the baddie. We aim on building the goodie, because that's better for your psychology anyway. So we want to build that up, build that vibration up. So then that doesn't have a home to live in. And we're using, the water we use is pretty cool too, because it's structured water. So, and triple filtered and all those things, like those things mean a lot to us. So that water's intelligence, if we understand the intelligence and the consciousness of the water going into a water body, that's pretty powerful, right? To be able to move, like, and we talk about the Earth as a blue planet, right? She's a blue planet. She's a water planet, because if you look up and she's water, well, so are we. We're a water planet.
Yep.
We're water. So yeah, there's a lot that we don't know, isn't there? And there's a lot that's actually out there. But I think it's like the sayings about as is above, so is below.
Yeah.
As is within, so is without. Like, I just think there's a lot in that little statement itself.
Yeah. And I think, you know, if you have the intention of like acceptance and welcoming what is best to serve you, then and it might be hard to sort of think of it like that if we've got something going on like cancer, but if we have that, just knowing that it's there to either push us in a certain direction, because we need that's for our, like you were saying, you would have never stopped working and had all that. There were things that happened for you that absolutely have served you. I'm sure they have. And I can't imagine what it's like now, like 3 years later, what life and everything is like now compared to what it was, even though I'm sure it was great back then. But
no, well, it wasn't. And it's interesting because 2 weeks before I got diagnosed, because I'd started to get a cough and I was starting to get tired and I didn't really know what it was. And and I think COVID had started then. Yeah, it had. So everyone was worried about that it was COVID. That's right. And I was saying, no, I'm not sick. But I started to get this cough. But I remember working with a client in the Narang clinic here, because I was seeing clients then. And I was treating her for breast cancer. She had breast cancer, so I was treating her. And I said, oh my God, like, we're just having a conversation. I couldn't afford to get sick. Like, I couldn't afford not to work. That was my mind. I had to work 12 hours a day. That was what I was doing to try and rebuild my business, because we'd gone through a really bad time for a lot of reasons, blah, blah, blah. 2 weeks later, I'm laid up in hospital. I can't move. And the business has done better without me. Like, it's like, because now it's about a different message. And it's not about what you said. It's like, cancer didn't happen to me. It happened for me.
Yeah.
And I took it on as my friend. So I actually did a podcast on it. It's on my shadow self. Like, cancer was my shadow self. So I wanted to welcome her, because she'd never been listened to. She'd never been listened to. So it's like, come on, talk to me. Let me hug you. Let me make you feel safe. Let you be here. So I got to know my shadow self, that side of me that didn't want to talk, that kept her heart very closed, that carried grief for everyone from all of her life. I wanted to have communication with her. So I made union with her. And I talk about it. We walked in grace, and we still walk in grace, because she's a part of me that I didn't want to put down anymore. So that's how I treated cancer. She was my shadow that welcomed me.
That's a celebration, isn't it?
1,000%. 1,000%. Because it's like, it's taken me nearly 60 years to come into my body and into my spirit. Like, I'm 60 this year, and it's like, what? Yeah, I'm just starting to live my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, on this end, but it's like, yeah, I really encourage people, really encourage people to, whether it's cancer, whether it's autoimmune, whether it's depression, maybe put a profile around it and say, well, this is my shadow self. Meet her as you would a friend that you love, or a family member. Not you, because obviously there's things you got going on with you, but meet her as something else, or him. But meet it as your shadow self, as a profile of someone that you want to get to know. Because if I can embrace that, shadow of me, I dissolve it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now it becomes one.
Yeah.
Instead of it something trying to get its attention and yelling and screaming at me, right?
Yes.
If I can embrace her as my shadow self and say, let's come home. Let's come home together. Embrace her. Now I'm going to dissolve the angst around that which is causing the low vibration.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the way you put that. And it makes so much sense. Like, then it becomes, just in terms of, like, I don't know, aliens and panspermia and microbes or invisible people, who cares? It just becomes about that there are aspects of the self that need to be
100%.
integrated. And so if they're yelling and they're hot and they're angry or waving and they're, it's like, okay, let's have a chat. Let's have a break and stop and look at what we got to. It's just like anything. And I guess that's why I like Enlightened Conversations, because we can talk about anything in an enlightened way. And that's kind of what I want for us, how we want to talk to ourselves. Like,
That's right.
how about if we could do that with ourselves, like just any part of ourselves that we didn't like, how about if we have that enlightened conversation and embrace them so that we don't have that duality anymore. It just becomes a oneness and it becomes loved.
Yeah.
And it becomes part of us, and then it's serving us, and its best parts present themselves. Like you said, like the ability to speak, and the ability to stop, and the ability to trust, that it's going to be okay. We'll be okay financially, and
there is a universal law. There is a universal law, and that you are a part of that. So we can spend our life fighting that and coming up to blocks, or we can hop on the same train and say, okay, I surrender, and I will work with this universal law. Being discerning, I'm not saying that you're just going to be rash and do stuff, but it's about once you're sitting in that place of peace that comes within, where you bring all those fragments together. And we are multidimensional. That's how I talk about it. So if we're multidimensional, then the way we heal has to be multidimensional. We can't, and it's more than just three. It's more than mind, body, spirit. I'm talking multi-dimensional, like there's so many layers of us that we don't know and we don't see, and that's what I call the mystery, and that's what I love. And I don't need an answer to that. I just know that there's more, and that I will respect the thought that maybe we did, because what's to say I would talk about the star dropping down. There's a dreaming about it, a dreaming story. The star comes to the ground and makes you humans and whatever. Who knows what that star is? I don't know, but I know that there's a connection to all humans and the rest of the galaxy, and I know that we are just one tiny little sand drop in like this galactical force, right? So I don't understand it. I don't even pretend to understand it. And I'm really an earth-based person. Like I'm double Capricorn. I'm pragmatic, but I have this true respect for nature and for the cycles and for the connection that we have to things that we don't know, because I know it all happens out there. I know it all happens. And it's happening for me, not to me. I just have to hop in the right space to see that and to do that. So yeah.
Well, I think it's really beautiful that we have an open-mindedness to that. It's kind of like a weird concept to think about, but that if we are all one, but everything's a mirror, then it takes what it takes for us for everyone to be able to love and embrace the mirror that they see in everyone. And it's a very hard thing to do. And I think, but there's always that opportunity and that to have I guess a willingness there to do that. Today I'm willing to, in my heart and in my mind, to be tolerant and to be kind of thought with people's imperfections or seemingly imperfections, their shortcomings and their maybe lack of consciousness, and to pay it forward before I even set foot on the pavement outside my home, that's my intention for the day. And I challenge anyone to do that and to see if they had a better day at the end of the day, if they felt better about the world, better about themselves. Because if we can do that, like just by choice, like one person, then imagine if everybody was doing that. Imagine if everybody was doing that all the time.
I know, so true. And it's like when you say that, like I was just speaking to one of my people yesterday or the day before, and she was talking about how something triggers, when people trigger us, and it's like, well, you're being triggered for your own self. But I said, I actually don't use that word trigger. I said, it's a teaching. You're being taught something. Because there's something being heightened in you. It's being brought up. It's a seed that's coming through the ground for you to now go, oh, what do I need to look at here?
Yes.
That person, I don't think that person's very conscious. Man, that's pretty much egoic for me to say. I don't know anything about that story. What is my teaching? It's not true. Everyone talks about I can't do this because it triggers me, or this is a trigger. It's like, it's again that shadow. It's like, no, why is a trigger scary? Because it makes you feel uncomfortable. We don't get change unless we get uncomfortable. that's the thing about human nature. We have to go through a change, because if we're comfortable, we'll stay comfortable. It's our psychology, it's our reptilian brain made up. It moves away from pain into pleasure. So if we're uncomfortable, and this was another thing my journey gave me was learn, because I was so much pain. So I would go and be comfortable in my state of uncomfortability.
Yeah.
And
intentionally
go and sit in find comfortability in my uncomfortability. And that's the same with triggers. People get worried about trigger because it puts us on alert. I know triggers. I get that, right? I've got my stories there too. But what I'm choosing to do now is it's not, it's like, oh, so it's going to heighten, but it's like, what's my teaching? So go past the emotion, because the emotion will take us down a rabbit hole and we'll end up re-traumatizing ourselves. So it's like, okay, now wait there. What am I actually learning? That person said this and that triggered me. What's come up for me to actually put the sun on? What seeds come through the earth to put the sun on? So then now it's about, a bit like my shadow. It's like now I can actually let that grow and have its life force, so then it goes back to the earth. So then it comes back as one. Do you know what I mean? Like
I do. I always like, I don't ignore it. And if I have to, I'll like kind of separate it out from me and ask it what it looks like. It could look like anything. It could look like a child. It could look like I don't know, anything, a black mass, whatever. But to have a conversation, ask it what it needs, how it feels, what it needs, what can I give it? Then find a way to give that energetically to that part, like you would, like sun shining down on it. And then it actually, like a tree with flower, it will give you something back. There's going to be some gift in that is unearthed, because that's what fruit and trees do. They give back. And so, shadow work is it's half the job is us accepting, and then the other half is us, actually receiving that it's got something for us, So I was talking to Anne Alexson the other day on she's got a book that she was writing called Being Unfuckwithable, and she was talking about in her book about chasing down tigers, which is triggers, another word for triggers. She doesn't call them triggers either. So she calls them tigers. So we're chasing down our tigers, and they're the things that we fear the most. We don't wait for them to hit. We don't wait for the tiger to pounce. We go looking for the tiger. We understand it. We, roam with the tiger, like find a way to
find the power.
Don't hide in your home and wait for the trigger to not happen because you're too afraid to leave. Like do the work to embrace them and find a way beyond them, because they are there. Absolutely believe you that they are there to teach us something, and they're only a trigger until we haven't learned the lesson. Then they're just an awareness of something that we've reclaimed that we didn't know was already there.
And the triggers are coming from a memory. They're not from the reality of now. And they're coming from a fantasy of what we think might happen, all out of context of where it originally started.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And
so that's just in that moment, like when you get that heightened charge because of that event or person or whatever it was, it's like you do have a split second to feel it come up and go, and because that's the art of observation of self, right? So it comes up and it's like, oh man, I can feel that anxiety writing in me, and they've just said that or done that or looked at me or I've done whatever, it's like, oh, okay, but wait there, I'm here now. This is 2023. This isn't 2000. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, because we can start to observe it, not to rationalize it, but we can observe it, and now it's our teacher. And now it might be a part of our shadow self, and we can dissolve that by embracing that, because love embraces all. At the end of the day, it's just about love, right? That's it's the pure energy of love, pure love.
It is. And even like if we're not triggered, like if we find ourselves in a situation, I did on the weekend actually, where I was in a situation where I didn't expect to be, and someone was having just a heightened, response to something, and I had an opportunity to let things run their course. They weren't directed at me, so it was just more like let things run their course, but then safely discuss what I observed later in a rational form rather than to get involved, engaged, and hysterical, because it could have easily happened because you want to be,
Yeah.
protecting people and all that stuff. But to not be a bystander, but to be an understander
Yeah.
and a injector of awareness into the situation. And so that's what I chose to do. I actually chose to do my absolute best to contain my reality at the time, which could have been spilling all over the place and creating more trauma. And then later I actually wrote an email to the people that were at that event and put my 2 bobs worth into how that could have been managed, or could change in the future to prevent that from happening and all that. So often people say, if you don't say something, you condone it, but there is a time and a place to know
right.
what to say. Part of it would have been if I'd spoken at that time, I was so, I wouldn't say triggered, but I was so shocked. I was in trauma. Seeing this happen, that I thought, I don't know if I could speak appropriately right now. And I'm a trained counselor too, but that's how unexpected
Yeah.
it was, because it was a very professional environment, like very professional environment. So I was like, oh shit. So there's another example of like, it doesn't have to be an old thing triggering anything. It could just be that you're in a weird situation. You find yourself and going, oh, okay. Well, and to to be able to find your voice, but to do so in a way that's positive, and it's coming from a non-judgmental but positive place.
Yeah.
Still not allowing yourself to be gaslit and saying, oh, that didn't happen.
Yeah. No, that's true. If we can respond in a non-charged way, then we're always going to get better learning from that, right?
Exactly. And we're all human. So, when you have done a lot of work on yourself and you know how to deal with trauma, it doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to go through one. Like, things won't hit and they'll just be like, oh, okay, that bomb went off. Okay. Now what do we do? It's kind of like funny, because it's like, I kind of looked at that situation and goes, oh, wow, that kind of stuff used to be normal 20 years ago and it's not anymore now. And you kind of go, wow, how when you're in it, you don't see that it's unnormal. You don't, yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. People talking to each other really rudely and you're like, whoa, okay, So yeah, it's interesting how sometimes we don't realize how much we've healed until we find ourselves in a situation where we would have just behaved a completely different way. And that's how we know we've healed a lot. Because we're not in reaction at that moment. We're just in, okay, hold space here. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining me, Suzy. It was just a great opportunity to catch up with an amazing, your amazing journey. What's happening? What does your life look like now, like, daily and that, compared to 12-hour days every day? What are you up to now?
Well, I still somehow have really big days. I don't know how I used to fit clients in. So the biggest change is that I don't see clients on a one-to-one level in the clinic. I do consulting for clients online if they needed some support in whatever way that was. I would do that. It's really been about supporting my clinics. We've just opened a clinic in Port Melbourne, so I'm going down there a little bit and getting that all sorted. And I don't know, I'm interested. I'm doing a lot of writing, I guess. Maybe that's what I'm trying to do at the moment, just writing, researching and looking at the whole water and how we can best be of service in the next 20 years. That's what I'm doing. How do we best be of service for the next 20 years? Yeah.
Oh, I love it. That sounds awesome. I love how our paths evolve.
Sorry, I was just going to say, not to mention, I do yoga most days and swim in the ocean and do the sun and do a lot more of that type of stuff that I didn't think I had time for before.
Yeah, interesting. And we fill our days. I used to fill my days. Oh my God. Yeah. Life's so different today than it was for me too 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's really lovely to catch up with you, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the next 5-6 years go. And just it's wonderful to have a time with you, and now I have another time with you, and just to see the the growth and the change, and who appreciate that. And it's hard to describe, but it's pretty precious to have like people that I know, that I feel, even though that has been 5 years, it's like I can just sit down with you and chat like it was just the other day. And that's pretty special. I really treasure that, Suzy. Thank you.
It is. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Me too. It's funny because it has just been that time, but it feels like yesterday. But if you think about what's changed in that time, gosh, it's been a lot, hasn't it? But anyway, thank you so much, Michelle. It's been great.
You're very welcome. And if any of you need to find Suzy's clinics, it's just bottomsupcolonics.com, Suzy?
.com.au.
.com.au. Okay, cool. So it's bottomsupcolonics.com.au. That's the best place to find all things.
They'll find locations on there, and they'll find a clinic near them and other information on there. Yep.
Yeah, it's easy peasy. I went on the website and booked my thing through there, and you can even choose a person that I don't mind who I get. I'm a bit more like leave it up to the universe, see who I get. But you can choose your own person that you want, therapist that you want to have that process through. And I'm just looking forward to. I'll send you a little note afterwards. Hey,
yeah. Please do.
Yeah, it'd be great to know what's going on in there, like under the microscope. I'd love to know.
Well, you will see it on the big screen. You'll get
on the big screen. Oh well, if I've got some, hangers on that aren't required there anymore, this is a great opportunity to say, hey guys, thanks for coming. But
see you later. We're done.
We're good. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to chatting to you next time on Enlightened Conversations. Bye for now.